Lynch's press conference saw President Trump condemning White House coverage in what some have described as a rant. Trump said that his administration is running just fine.
Just a few weeks into Donald Trump's presidency, many are speaking of a White House in chaos. Trump, though, says nothing could be further from the truth. At an impromptu press conference, the president said his administration was a finely tuned machine.
We have made incredible progress. I don't think there's ever been a president elected who in this short period of time has done what we've done.
Setting the record straight, that appeared to be Trump's main aim in this rambling 80-minute event. He continued his defense in familiar style by railing against the media.
The press has become so dishonest that if we don't talk about it, we are doing a tremendous disservice to the American people. Tremendous disservice. We have to talk about it to find out what's going on, because the press honestly is out of control. The level of dishonesty is out of control. Violent crime in America.
But the president also appears to have lost confidence in members of his own team. He accused them of leaking information from confidential phone calls.
I don't want classified information getting out to the public. And in a way, that was almost a test. So I'm dealing with Mexico. I'm dealing with Argentina. We were dealing on this case with Mike Flynn. All this information gets put into the Washington Post and gets put into the New York Times. And I'm saying, what's going to happen when I'm dealing on the Middle East? What's going to happen when I'm dealing with really, really important subjects like North Korea?
Another topic angering Trump, allegations that his team had covert contacts with Russia. The issue forced the resignation of National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Trump said Flynn had done nothing wrong. He was then asked about Russia's latest missile test.
Is Putin testing you, do you believe, sir?
No, I don't think so. I think Putin probably assumes that he can't make a deal with me anymore because politically it would be unpopular for a politician to make a deal. We're a very powerful nuclear country, and so are they. I've been briefed, and I can tell you one thing about a briefing that we're allowed to say because anybody that ever read the most basic book can say it. Nuclear holocaust would be like no other. Honor to be with you.
This press conference also ended like no other White House event, where the president heckled as he left the stage.
Let's get more on this. Let's bring in Ethan Porter, an assistant professor at George Washington University School of Media and Public Affairs. Ethan, thank you very much for being with us this evening. Trump taking on the press there, that's something that we have, of course, seen before. But in your view, was something different this time around?
I would say that for the first time, Donald Trump laid bare the level of animosity that he has toward the news media. In the past, he's tried to dance around it. Sometimes he'll pepper humor or make jokes of it. He'll make light of it. But this was nearly 80 minutes of intense opposition and anger, which was shocking to see. I don't think I've certainly never seen anything like it. And the level of adversarialism that he displays toward the press is at this stage of his administration is really something.
So what do you think is the best way for journalists to cope with this new reality in Washington, with this animosity that you speak of, and also with the fact that sometimes these politicians are uttering falsehoods?
Well, I do think that there's a role for journalists to call out falsehoods directly, as was done yesterday in the press conference. As you might remember, near the beginning of the conference, Trump claimed that, in fact, he'd won a larger electoral landslide than any president since Reagan. This was obviously false and should have rung false to every reporter in the room. And indeed, shortly thereafter, he was called to account for it, immediately conceding, of course, that he was wrong, not blaming himself, which he never does. But if journalists do that, if they call out his misinformation, I think there's hope there, and I think there's something to be said for it. I think it can be hard to sort of perform these fact checks in real time, but we're dealing with an administration that is allergic to the truth and is allergic to the facts, and the press should call them to account for on that.
But if you're constantly doing the fact checking there, I mean, how do you do the journalism? What do you make
Sure.
of the current environment? And how do you think that the media has been doing so far? Has it been doing good journalism? Is Trump wrong?
Well, I do think he's wrong for the most part, which is to say that the press is really active. There's a lot of energy on the press right now. There's a real interest in sort of bringing down Donald Trump's misinformation, right? They're very interested in that. Is it good journalism? Sure. Again, there's so much happening at once. I think it can be hard for anybody to process, let alone a news reporter or a news editor. But I would say, given the scale and scope of the administration's misinformation campaign, that I think at this point journalists are doing the best as can reasonably be expected, which is to say they're doing what they can with what's in front of them. And oftentimes, is the fact-checking going to overwhelm everything else? Possibly, but it's no less necessary for that reason. There still should be a commitment to truth, which is what defines journalism.
What do you think Trump's strategy might be in this regard? And have we ever seen this before to this extent from a U.S. president?
I think Trump's largest mistake is he believes that his 24 million Twitter followers give him license to sort of avoid other media outlets, right? He thinks he has a direct line to the people through Twitter. And this is, of course, based on one major faulty assumption, which is that Twitter users are pretty unusual to begin with. And even then, he's only got 24 million followers, right? I think he still believes that he can, denigrate the press and attack them. But in reality, that doesn't work, and he can't rely on Twitter alone. So I think there's going to be some strategic adjustment in the White House. There's going to have to be if they want to be more successful at getting their message out. And that will mean most likely cozying up to and, working with more mainstream outlets that reach far more people in total than does Twitter. Have we ever seen anything like this before? No. That's the short answer, and the true answer is that at this stage of an administration, for this level of animosity and anger and bad faith to exist is stunning and totally unprecedented. And again, it's not as if we've had other administrations have had bad relations with the press, right? What's new here, though, is that this is happening in his first 100 days when we expect our presidents to enjoy honeymoon periods, right? And that's not what's happened at all. Instead, he's at total war with them. And, it's barely, his administration isn't even 30 days old.